Welcome to another edition of 1 in 15. As ever, I'm going to get my guests to introduce themselves.
Yeah, hi, I'm Simon Hawtrey-Woore. I call myself an outdoor executive coach. I help business owners and leaders in business, particularly in professional services, get more out of more vitality and more energy out of the work they do. The outdoor bit is I do all my work outside. I'm a bit of a nature nut, so I love nature as a space for us to really learn and develop and be held. So yeah.
Brilliant. It's great to have you today, Simon. Thank you for your time. As you know, the series of interviews is about wrestling with one big thing dominating our thinking. What is that for you?
I suppose pretty emotional and monumental change. I say monumental because that's what I'm making it feel and mean. But yeah, some change, and it's nothing to do with COVID, but COVID has its part in it.
Cool. Okay, so tell me a bit more about where that change is coming, or how that's manifesting itself in your life at the moment.
Yeah, so for the last 15 years, I've been sort of journeying with my daughter. My daughter's 15. She's got severe learning disability and other challenges. And I suppose for the last 15 years, I've been supporting her and trying to sort of get through life with that.
Sure.
With a lot of care and a lot of joy, but really tough moments. And I suppose underlying running on a huge amount of adrenaline the whole time. She needs full care, so a lot of alert. And then during lockdown, it got even more intense because any support disappeared, and I looked after her for about 5 months solidly. Mm-hmm. Absolutely blessed that we headed to the forest and spent our time there. So that was great for us to work through that, and we had some very strong memories. But again, it was all high adrenaline. And then as lockdown coincidentally sort of eased a little bit, she moved into a residential home. And so I suppose from change point of view, I've gone from 15 years running on high adrenaline, with a lot of my decisions being made for me by the fact that of her needs and what we need to do with her, to being out in the open, with huge possibilities, but also carrying the emotion of a pretty significant letting go, and not having my little forest buddy around has been tough.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like a kind of a crazy journey from what you said. And I know your daughter. I know she's an amazing person, full of life and vitality. But you've kind of gone from this pre-COVID existence of being part of her care, of as you say, revolving certain professional and personal decisions around that provision for her, and then having this intense time where through those circumstances of COVID and other things, you had a greater responsibility, where you went to the woods and you had all kinds of adventures, and then suddenly she's in residential care, and that's one more transition. It's quite a lot of quick, quite seismic transitions. How's that affected you as you've lived and looked at the world?
I think I suppose sitting here now, just incredibly powerful and incredibly positive, really, in the sense that the COVID bit gave me permission, I suppose, to let go of a lot of stuff that I was hanging on to do with fear, ego. I just had to let it all go.
Sure.
So where it's got me now, and I think I remember we talked a little bit about this. My coach gave me a metaphor that I really loved, and it's really helping me get through this, which is that I'm on a bridge crossing from where I've been to where I want to get to.
Sure.
And Scarlett taught me everything about letting go and being in the moment and being open to opportunities. And I suppose right now, emotionally, what's helping me is knowing that I'm in transition. I was talking to someone the other day about how in the West we hurry along paths to get from A to B, and I'm sort of mindful that I'm in transition, but to enjoy that transition, I'm on this bridge going to a newer life, but being open to what that is. But what Scarlett has made me reconnect with is what's true to me and my values. Mm-hmm. So I'm pretty determined to what I take over the bridge with me serves me, I suppose, and that's buoyed me. I have very sad days when I really miss her, but I'm very buoyed by the fact that I've, through the intensity of the forest life, I suppose, I've really connected with who I am and my values. And so I sense that when I hit the metaphorical border guards at my bridge crossing and they check my luggage, that they won't find anything in there that's not going to give me energy and not going to serve me.
Yeah, and I love that metaphor. As you say, we had a chat about that earlier this week, and I found it really, because obviously as coaches, that's such a key part of our conversation, isn't it? Is helping people understand what they carry, and often those things that have been really useful. They've served such an important, vibrant purpose in our past, but now they've become a burden. Now they're tarnished. They've lost their energy. Whatever metaphor we want to add on to that. How do you wrestle with, how do you recognize which of those things do need to get put down, or new things to be picked up? How do you recognize that? How do you have the courage to do that?
So values, really, what's important to me, and I've been able to really connect with what's important to me, but that's not necessarily a rational tick list.
Yeah.
It's a combination of that. It's a combination of connecting with what I enjoy doing, and I suppose I get to a point where I really feel, if I feel something's making me feel tired or anxious or angry, rather than be fearful of it, I suppose, is to find to look at it and ask it some questions in terms of what's behind that, and is it serving me? Is it going to give me the energy I need? And I'm a strong believer in our bodies tell us that. Like everything, it's far easier said than done, but I think the one thing we cannot ignore is how we feel, and rather than putting that in I don't want to feel that and block it out, I think there's an opportunity to say, okay, so an example might be, I've just had a conversation with someone and I'm not feeling great about it, and it's worth just having a bit of an inquiry in terms of at what point in the conversation did you start to feel and what was going on, and I suppose my belief around my work and everything is that somewhere in there a value has been spiked, where it's not quite right. There's some incongruence in what they said or whatever, wherever you're at, and I think there's great learning in that. And I suppose, taking the bridge analogy, I suppose I'm going to stray from time to time, and my ego and fears are going to pull me off, but just being aware of that and catching myself, and my values tend to help me get back to where I need, and hopefully they catch me quicker. But something we talked about, which I think something I've really started to appreciate, is having a sort of a network of people to share and talk to, because I think they're also guides for you to this incongruence bit that they pick up people's energy, when you're sharing, and then when you start talking about something else that you're going to do, and your tone drops and it doesn't quite fit. So I think there's a bit about knowing that and getting to know what's really important to you and being honest with that, but also having sort of trusted advisors around you that you can share and just openly talk with, but aren't afraid to say, are you sure that you've said that, but you're talking about that? How does that sit?
I mean, that stuff's really so important. I mean, obviously as coaches, we're slightly biased because that's part of our trade, but that thing of, the reality that even knowing and identifying our own values isn't straightforward. It's quite a process. It can be quite tricky. We quite often have values that, at least on the face of it, appear contradictory to each other. I remember having a conversation with somebody who was quite kind of, on the face of it, anti-capitalist in their standing point. they really wanted to kind of cut free from all the binds of that. But actually, when we kind of dug down a little bit, it became clear that financial security was really important to them. Now, those two things don't have to be diametrically opposite, but there was a tension between those two values. And it took them, understandably, quite a while to work that out. But again, it occurs to me when you're talking about that network of friends and supporters, that they can help us do that work, can't they? They can help us say, as you say, that, oh, you're saying this, but you're doing this. And there's this idea of praxis where how we see the world and how we are in the world are always interrelating with each other. They're always kind of bouncing off each other. And where there's cognitive dissonance, where there's incongruence, you have to say, perhaps one of those needs to change, or perhaps how I look at one of those needs to change. So if anyone's listening to this and they recognize they're on a journey, they're working out what some of their values are, they've maybe recognized some things that they always thought they believed that maybe they don't believe in the same way, they can see that bridge emerging on the horizon. What would be your advice to them about the next few steps they take?
I suppose it's just critical to connect with what's important to you, and it's more nuanced than doing a value study and getting a list of values and things. But it's about that. And then, so it's two things really. One is really, in however you want to articulate and connect with it, what's really important to you, and then sharing that. So it is that you've got friends and family that are like your accountability buddies in coaching language, but can help you going forward, and it helps with relationships just to share what's really important to me. What's really important to me is to be listened to, and that's an important message for friends, and but you're coming from your own place, because I think the danger is that if you don't cross the bridge without that, then you're going to bring things over with you that you're missing the opportunity to leave things behind that that don't give you energy. And ultimately we want to be as vital and energized as possible as we go through life.
Sure. And there's something in there as well, isn't there, about, as you were saying, about living our values, offering those things that we want for ourselves to other people, so that we can practice them, but also we can be held accountable to them. So if we say we value being forgiven and we're not practicing forgiving other people, then we've got to sort that one out. I can imagine that, you mentioned fear, and we probably only got a couple of minutes left to kind of nail this stuff, but you mentioned fear as being one of the big blockers there. I can imagine that, even when we've identified things that, to use your analogy, we need to leave behind before we cross that bridge, that putting them down, even knowing how to put them down, can be quite difficult. Have you got any advice for that, about how we put things down that maybe, as I say, used to be useful but are no longer as useful?
Yeah, I suppose it's to be with them and connect with them, but also there's a mechanic, I think, which is about being in the moment. Mm-hmm. So when a fear rises up, I think there's a real opportunity to get in the moment. Trust. Our brains are fantastic. They deal with stuff in the back that you don't really know, and so I think as you're journeying, is to be in the moment. So going back to the metaphor, when a fear pops up as you're out walking in an environment, you're journeying, is just take some time to be in that moment of the journey and mindful of the journey and mindful of what's around you or the conversation you're in. And it's incredible how that fear can be dissipated when you're in the conversation and you're in the moment. Your brain's still working on it, but it's a way of processing it, rather than trying to fix it, I suppose.
And there's a real power, isn't there, in even just acknowledging that fear is there, that it's real, even if you're not really sure where it's coming from. Often we know where it's coming from, it's just we're scared to engage with that truth. But just admitting that there's a tension there, positive or negative, and wrestling with it in some ways, really, really empowering.
And I think
Sorry.
Yeah, just one point I would say is I suppose the real opportunity in fear, and it's not always able to see this, is it's just a massive insight. It's a big opportunity, really, to say, oh, okay, there's a big signal going on.
Yeah.
You know, to not to look at it and understand it rather than sort of run away from it.
Yeah. So it was one of the most primal instincts, as it says, our reptile brain kind of kicking off, and got a lot to teach us, actually, if we're prepared to engage with it. That's really great, Simon. We've pretty much run out of time, so I just want to thank you again. I want to wish you the best on that bridge journey as you cross it.
Yeah.
I'm confident knowing you that that you'll be pretty good at putting down the things you don't want to carry, and I'm looking forward to whatever the new adventure on the other side of that ravine or wherever is. So, Hawtrey-Woore, thank you very much.
Yeah, lovely. Cheers. Bye now.